Welcome to Bonehead Weekly, and this is part two of Nerds. And I want to say a special shout out to all those special listeners that we have now, all those people that came by and did exactly what we asked them to do at Scarefest and tell us who or why they were the biggest nerd. Zero of you did that.
Yep. I feel like our listeners aren't listening.
I don't think they were listening. But I do want to say thank you to Charlie Band. We'll have the interview up probably the week after this one. That was not planned. That just happened. Everything that was supposed to have happened before that didn't work out consistently for two
Yeah.
weeks leading up to it. Every time there was something, I was like, oh, maybe no. Oh, maybe no. Oh, maybe no. That just worked out. And Charlie was nice and said it was meant to be. I think he's giving us way too much credit.
Yep.
So when you listen to it, it was a lot of fun. He was only supposed to do 20 minutes. 10, 20 minutes is actually what he said. And we got almost an hour out of him. So
Yeah.
can't thank that guy enough. So
Yeah.
go buy his merch, go to his
Again,
website.
bucket list item. I actually went by his booth and on Sunday, me and James missed him by literally seconds. But I ended up buying the final set of the NECA Ultimate Puppet Master. So now I have a six shooter and Jester.
I never even made it. I never even got to his booth. I got to Don and Tom's, and that was it.
Yeah. So
Never got there.
and right next to him was Dee Wallace, and my daughters got to talk to her. So that's another memory that I will get to add to my memory bank. So
Your memory bank.
so thank you, Marianne.
Oh, what'd she do? She help you out? I know she
No, I
was
just talked. I
always
just
Dee's
talked.
handler.
I talked to her, and she, just graciously just said go. She said go ahead. So she kind of guided us in there. So she was very accommodating.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Mary Ann's
but
a sweet
yeah.
person. All right. Anything else you want to talk about from this past week's Scarefest?
Nope. Just as always, it's always a great time to be there.
I don't know if we're all dead or
Always
still.
go.
All right. Yeah. No, it is.
I am
It
actually
was a huge
fighting. I am
crowd.
actually fighting. I'm fighting a severe illness, so I don't know.
A severe
My
what?
energy level, my energy level is so low.
Well, mine's a little bit. It wasn't too bad till about 20 minutes ago, but yeah, and I know a lot, there's the one particular person I'll give a shout out to who's going to have to stay an extra 2 days in Lexington because they're literally in their room with COVID. So,
Oh,
oh,
geez.
friend of the show. So get well. You know who you are.
Yeah, get well, whoever you are, because
Well,
I
I'll
don't
tell
know.
you all later. I don't know that
Okay.
they want their business out there, but I will say something about Brandon. Brandon hooked them up with something. I'll tell you all about it later. But Brandon Griff is a solid person, even though he never texts me back when I texted him earlier. He's a solid person, and Scarefoot was a lot of fun, and I had a lot of people say thank you to me, and it meant the world to me. So I don't have any jokes. I don't have any jokes about that. It's been very sweet and very kind. Even the people who had criticism, I think I posted, it was valid criticism. I know why they said it. I know why I did it. I know I didn't have much of an option. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah. I think I know what you're referring to, and I
well, the
think
screen panel ran short, and I
yeah,
didn't have much. And what I will say, in not in my defense, well, yeah, in my defense a little bit. If you're listening to this, and especially if you're a new subscriber, we picked up 5 or 6 on YouTube just real quick. Um, we did our best to get everybody in that room. That room was not as big as we hoped it would be for a lot of reasons that I can't talk about on here. And we put people down walls, we put down people down the middle of the aisles, and we put people over on sides of the stage. And what I would say is we got as many people in that room as we could. We were completely past capacity in that room. And a lot of those folks who were on that stage had other places that they needed to go because they couldn't be there to midnight still signing and taking pictures. And we wanted to make sure that everybody. And the second part of that is the good thing about Scarefest and any panel I run is that you may not get to ask your question, but when you come into the panel I run, you will get the opportunity. May not happen, but you had your shot.
yeah.
What, you don't understand that one, Chad?
No, I got it.
Okay. No, I just don't sit there and ask questions the whole time. They
Yeah,
get
I
their
got it.
opportunity.
I
They may
got
not
it.
get it.
Well, you even did that during the Bonehead panel,
Well, yeah, we had
right?
to
We
go to
threw
the
it.
audience. I mean,
Well,
they
that's
were
what I'm
just
saying.
sitting
We
there.
threw it to the audience, which is good. I agree.
Yeah, it's important.
If it, but if it missed my shrunken head question, somebody was going to get stabbed.
I almost bought that Blu-ray from his table, and I
It
talked
wasn't
myself into
there.
it. It was.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
No, it
I,
wasn't.
I held it in my hand, dude. It was. It wasn't on the one with the table. It was over on the other side.
You son of a bitch, you could have said, "Hey, Chad, here's the shrunken head deep Blu-ray," because I was
Would you
looking
have
for
bought
it.
it?
Oh,
I would
really?
have.
I'm sorry, dude. Seriously, I held it, and I almost actually did say, "Hey, Chad, here's that movie," and I did. I'm like, because I was like, well, he looked at the action figures on this table. He had to see it.
I did not. I looked for it the other day.
I was
Oh,
giving him crap behind before well, actually, Chad was peeing when I was telling James, like, yeah, thanks for coming by and saying hi Sunday. It was really good seeing you all.
You
So,
were in panels all day.
oh, for two, I was in two.
well, yeah,
Oh,
but
I
I
didn't
mean,
know that.
we also didn't want to interrupt the panel. If we come in mid-panel, people
Oh,
get
you could have got
upset.
in that screen panel mid panel. It wasn't going
That's
to
what I
happen.
mean.
Couldn't happen.
I wasn't gonna
All
get
right, so
stabbed.
part. Phew.
Yeah, part. Let's
Let
talk
me tell you,
about.
there are a lot of jokes, but there was a lot of thirsty people in that. A lot of
Yeah,
thirsty people.
Well,
for
I'll
two
be
people.
honest. Listen
For
to a lot of the comments on the social medias.
I have three stories about that thing. It was fun. It was fun. And
Oh, I'm
everybody
sure.
was a true professional on the panel.
all
Chad,
right, nerds.
what?
Talk about
That's
nerds.
our word. That's not your word.
Part two. I can't do Ogre's voice. Nerds. I can't do
Which
it.
actually, who wants to go first?
You want me to go first? I can go first.
It
I'll
doesn't
do it.
matter to me. I've got something particular I was going to bring up. Go ahead.
Well, no, if you want to kick us off, that's fine too.
Well, so we didn't talk about this movie last time, I don't think, but which one of the nerds from Revenge of the Nerds is your favorite?
I don't
Ooh,
know. To
I
be honest, I haven't seen the movie in so long.
I can
Can't.
tell. I know which one's my personal favorite.
okay.
Timothy Busfield's character.
And when I was a kid, my favorite of those two movies was always the sequel, Nerds in Paradise,
Same here.
and Booger was always my favorite.
No, I always, I
For those
all,
for the youth that may be listening to this, you may know him better as the voice of Snot from American Dad.
I always loved Poindexter with the big thick glasses.
But he doesn't do a lot in those movies.
I know, but what he does is hilarious to me. Like there's that one scene in the second one where he's just completely oblivious and I can't remember what he's doing, but he's completely oblivious. He's working on some kind of mechanical device and he just goes right into the pool. He just walks into the pool while he's working on his equipment.
Yeah, I don't even remember that. I haven't seen him in years.
And then it after Poindexter, it is oh, I'm blanking on his name. Lamar.
Hmm.
I always liked Lamar. I
So
thought he was funny.
there's four Revenge of the Nerds movies. Robert
Hmm.
Carradine played Lewis, and then the Booger was Curtis Armstrong. Donald Gibb was Ogre. I guess we do kind of have to give a shout out to Donald Gibb. Larry B. Scott was Lamar, Chad. Larry B.
Yeah.
Scott. I forgot James Cromwell was in the movie.
Which I was trying to think with Lamar. Was I'm trying to remember if he was ever actually intelligent, or was he considered a nerd because he was homosexual? Because I was trying to remember that the other day, and I haven't seen it in so long.
Well, it's a fascinating movie because some of it, so I mean, they tried a remake, was it a decade ago, and they actually shut it down?
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's so much of that movie that just couldn't be done today. I mean, we've talked about it on the show
Yeah,
before.
numerous times. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and so I teach a class, an elective course every other summer where I look at higher education and film. And exactly what you're talking about comes up every year. People will be like, "Oh, I remember watching that when I was younger," and they'll go back and watch it. And these are working professionals in colleges now, and they remember watching it maybe when they were a teenager, and they go back and watch it, and they're like, "There's so much wrong with that movie."
Yeah, it doesn't work now. We look at it from the lens of the society that we now work, and you can't. It's hard to not do that, and you just forget that. Well, no, it's just funny, just funny. Anyway, I wanted to bring it up instead of just one pick of one particular nerd. I wanted to bring it up and I thought we might get stabbed if we didn't actually bring up Revenge of the Nerds on the Nerds one. Who
Yeah,
wants to go next?
that would be James. James said he wanted to go first.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can go. Like I said, I just didn't want to take anybody. I'm gonna go with and I think it gets misplaced now because of the films, though it's a little bit in the films, but it's nowhere near what it was in the comic. I don't think you can talk about being nerdy and popular culture without talking about Peter Parker.
Yeah,
I
I agree.
Yeah,
I think because
he was a fake nerd.
no, he wasn't. And this was oddly enough, Chad, it's true. I my
He was
wife
like Superman nerd. He wasn't really a nerd.
my wife asked me about, what we were going to talk about. I thought, we're doing the second part to nerds, and I said my first pick's going to be Peter Parker, and that's exactly her exact words were. He wasn't really a nerd, and I'm like, no,
No,
no, no.
I am
In
joking.
the
He really was a nerd.
in the comic books, think about it. He was 15
Yeah,
in the comic books, and his choice of activities was to go to a science
Science
display.
museum.
And then once he did get powers, does he go off and show off and try to impress? No, no, no. He decides, oh, I'll also need to formulate my own super sticky webbing.
Yeah,
And so the
he
fact that he locks himself in a basement to work on an adhesive, that dude's a nerd. And even in the comics later on, he's still fascinated by science. He's still, even in more recent, well, relatively recent times, he becomes part of the Future Foundation as a top scientist. He's a nerd, a
Yeah.
huge nerd.
Why
Um,
is he a fake nerd though? Why did you say he was a
he's not. I was joking. He's not a fake nerd. He legitimately is a nerd. Because I mean, he started out as a legitimate nerd who got picked on. He just got the powers and became a superhero.
and
okay?
I think it's really
Unlike
weird.
Superman, who pretends to be a nerd.
Yeah, yeah, I was about to say because that actually came up on a list that Clark Kent was a mild-mannered, nerdy reporter whose persona was similar to, and I'm like, no, 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 it's
No,
the opposite. He's faking it,
yeah,
whereas Peter Parker is, and I think that's what's really fascinating too, that in some ways in the 1980s, Peter Parker became nerd wish fulfillment, right? He was married to Mary Jane,
Hmm.
who was at one point a smoking hot model and actress and all this stuff, and it was nerd wish fulfillment. But at the same time, he never lost his, oh, let's go to the science display, oh, let's go to the museum, oh, all these different aspects to it. So I think Peter Parker is such a fascinating study. And even in comic books, when they try to make him nerdy, and I think one of the reasons that, because my wife is not a big fan of Spider-Man as a character, and I always say, no, no, I really love the character of Spider-Man because he never loses his passion for his nerddom, but also
he's one of
he
my all-time favorites. He's one of the ones that introduced me to comic books. So,
well, and it's because he's more realistic than most of them from
mhm.
that time period, right? I mean, because my wife loves Batman. I'm like, yes, but I'll never be Batman. I wasn't born into money. I wasn't, I don't have the money to buy all the equipment. And up through really the 80s, and it changes over time, but up through really the 80s, when I was reading Spider-Man, he was still worried about how he was going to pay his rent. Here he was, a brilliant mind trying to do what's right, even as a superhero. And he's worried about, Aunt May's going to lose a home. He can't afford classes in college. He's
Right.
having to do this. And so it was always, and the fact that he went to college, right? I mean, yes, ultimately he gave up his wrestling career because Uncle Ben died, but he could have went back to it. He could have made money doing it, and he realizes that's not what he needs to do. And so, I mean, every choice that he makes goes back to nerddom in some way, and I really admire that character's been that consistent. Um, and
Mhm.
I think we we can talk about the film somewhat because I think um the characters change over the years in comics, but I think you can look at the nerddom of Peter Parker in some ways. The actors all capture it in different ways, and I think that's really a key element of the character. So.
Yeah.
Do you prefer Spider-Man or Peter Parker?
I mean, as far as actually as a reader, one, and I think this is where the comics beat the film, and I'm going to make some people upset here, but it's the same reason often the novels, Stephen King's novels, beat Stephen King films often. It's
Hmm.
because you get more of the story, and I think what happens in Superman comics is, to use Chad's example, Superman's always Superman.
Yeah.
Peter Parker is always Spider-Man, or Peter Parker is always Peter Parker, even when he's Spider-Man. And I think that carries in the comics because you get the thought balloons, right? You
Mhm.
get the, oh, I'm going to be late. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to miss class. I've got to make up an excuse for why I'm going to be late to dinner. I'm going to, all of these different things. And so I think that that paranoia, the nerddom and all that stuff carries through. And so I think in the comics, they're not separate characters. They're not separated. In the film, they have to be, right?
Hmm.
Because you have to have the switching of persona. But I think it's someone that read the comic. I mean, there was a period in the 80s when Spider-Man got the original Captain Marvel's power, the power cosmic. And he briefly had all the powers in the universe, but he really didn't want to use it. And so hearing, him having the power cosmic, like he fought Dragon Man at one point and he literally almost gets burnt to a crisp, but the power regenerates him. And then he regenerates his costume. That's what he does with the power cosmic because he's still who he is. He doesn't want to lose sight of his own humanity. So I think that's what's unique about, and why the comic books, even though I love the films, I can go back to the comics that I read as a kid, and it's still Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Spider-Man can't be separated from Peter Parker in the comics, or at least the way I see it.
Hmm. Okay. Chad?
So my next pick, uh, James on the previous episode mentioned Donatello from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which was my favorite character from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So I'm not going to pick him because again, he's my favorite character and he's the nerd. But what we didn't talk about was Transformers. Um, and I'm going to pick my favorite Transformer of all time. It's actually going to be a do. It's going to be, I'm going to do a two for here because both are the nerds of the Transformers. It's the Generation 1 and Generation 2 nerds. I am, of course, talking about Wheeljack, the all-time biggest nerd in the Transformer universe, and then Perceptor, the transforming microscope. Both of those were my favorite Transformers growing up just because they were the nerds of the Transformers universe. You had Wheeljack, who was basically responsible for Teletran 1, getting it up and running, making sure everything was working. He created the Dinobots from scratch. If there ever was a problem that needed to be fixed, Wheeljack made sure it was done. He was the smart man. He was the one that Optimus Prime went to for anything. And then subsequently came Perceptor, who was even more nerdier than Wheeljack. I love both of these characters equally. And when you talk about cartoon nerds, you have Donatello, but when Transformers, you have to talk about Wheeljack and Perceptor. Just watching them talk, the way the voice actors, even the way the voice actors use their dialogue. In my personal opinion, the way Wheeljack's been portrayed in future iterations of Transformers, it's been lost. But that original version, you could tell he had that nerd inflection, and then when Perceptor came along, he was full blown nerd. So I had to mention those two for my first pick.
Okay. I got another one. Oh, it's killing me because I want to use one movie with him, but James already used that movie with another great nerd in it. It's Wayne Szalinski from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. And the reason, and I kept thinking about Rick Moranis, and of course he plays Louis Tully, which is another great nerd in the movie, but it's Ghostbusters, and we kind of already talked about Ghostbusters. Wayne Szalinski is a father who clearly is incapable of taking care of his children, who is single-minded to the point of, I don't know what you guys think, complete child neglect.
Mhm.
I'm just
Yeah.
I rewatched it a couple of years ago. I hadn't seen it in years, and it was always a movie I was okay with. But I watched it with my son, and it's not so much that I fell in love with it again, but it didn't play too bad. It held up okay, considering it came out in 19, was it 89 or 90? Oh my goodness, I already forgot. I had just had this pulled up. It did come out in the year 1989. I always forget that. It came up with two sequels. It came out with Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, 1992, damn near unwatchable. And I've actually never seen the direct-to-video Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves. Have you? Have either one of
No,
you ever seen that?
No,
no.
no, and I know at one point they were going to relaunch the We Shrunk, Honey, We Shrunk universe with Rick Moranis was supposed to come back, and it was going to have Josh Gad, and I know that fell apart at least as of now.
Yeah, and then if you look it up, it's still there. His wife was Diane Selinsky, and he's always trying to create things. And he lived, of course, next to a redneck neighbor who wanted to go fishing. They're all leaving. And also, I probably have a soft spot in my heart more for the actual ride at Disney than I actually do the movie. Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. Because who is in a Honey, I Shrunk the Audience other than Rick Moranis? That's right, Eric Idle.
That's true. I had forgot about that, but you're absolutely right.
Eric Idle is in Honey, I Shrunk the Audience. But Wayne Szalinski is my second pick simply because I thought, well, it's more of a three-dimensional character. However, he does spend the weekend, and I don't know, Rick Moranis always delivered the goods. I was trying to think, even in some of the crappier movies, has he ever given a bad performance?
Dude, he honestly, this is true. I
Yeah.
remember so well the cartoon Gravedale High, and it's because he did his own voice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. And so Gravedale High was burned into my head. Yeah, if you're not familiar with Gravedale High, listeners, it was a TV cartoon, Saturday morning cartoon back in the day, and the plot to it was Rick Moranis, more or less playing off of Ghostbusters a little bit, but has to become a teacher at a high school for monsters. And so you have the children of Dracula, kind of like Monster High, to be honest. For modern day, if you have kids that watch Monster High, my daughter watched the first iteration of it, and I know now there's a new live action iteration of it on Nickelodeon.
I have somehow
Um,
missed all of this, thank God. So,
but uh, but it was basically the same theory, except you just had Rick Moranis having to be a teacher at this school for monsters, and so it's called Gravedale High,
I don't
and it
think I've ever
was
seen it.
oh man, the theme song is burned into my memory forever. But of course, it was I love Ghostbusters, so when it was Rick Moranis has his own cartoon where he works with monsters, oh, sign me up. I
Yeah.
don't think it's available on DVD anywhere. I don't it. Chad, do you know?
What's that?
You own a lot of cartoons
Hmm.
did Gravedale High ever get a DVD release officially?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay, because I would that and Camp Candy, by the way, were they
Those
kind of
two
came
need
out
to be
around the same
released.
time. Oh yeah, I mean just classic because John Candy for Camp Candy, they were just both classics when I was a kid. Yeah,
Hmm.
immediate classics because I was at the right age to where I had seen Ghostbusters, but I was still into Saturday morning cartoons too, so it
Hmm.
was perfect, perfect. So anyway, sorry, Joe, I didn't mean to chime in, but when you said Rick Moranis, I was like, oh, Gravedale High, man, burned
No,
into my
no,
head forever.
absolutely. Add to it. I didn't have a ton of stuff to say about it. All right, who's next? Chad or James?
James.
Yeah, man, there's just so many great ones, but I'm going to in my list here that I wrote down is being complicated. Um, I think I'm gonna have to go a little bit old school here and go with a classic literary example of a nerd. And again, if you go back to the original source material, even more so, it's got to be Victor Frankenstein.
Oh, now that's a good one.
Victor Frankenstein was
What?
Victor Frankenstein was a student. In the movie, he's already a mad scientist. That's not the case. He's a medical student who becomes obsessed with and can't imagine anything else. He's socially awkward. He's odd. He's obsessive. It's very similar, actually, to what Joe was saying about,
But
Honey,
Wayne
I Shrunk the
Zelinsky,
Kids,
yeah, it
Wayne
fits right
Swansea.
in.
Um, in some ways he's a weird mirror of even a character like Peter Parker in that he becomes so obsessed with the science he can't, to borrow from Jurassic Park, he becomes too obsessed with what it can do instead of whether or not it should be done. And of course, it haunts him. It becomes an obsession, and of course,
Because
when he
life finds
achieves
a
it,
way, James.
yeah. Um, and Frankenstein it does as well, actually. Um, and so I was trying to think of there's a ton of other ones I could talk about, but I think you have to mention Victor Frankenstein as a medical student and what that looks like and what that means. It plays differently, and I love the Universal horror movies and things like that, but when he's originally a medical student that becomes obsessed with, I know better than the books. I know better than the established science. I know better than, and by the way, during the science of the time, he probably did know better than. We all know better than now what was actually going on as approved science at that time. But
Hmm.
I think it's just a fascinating case of again, this pop culture nerd, and again, I would say go with the classic literary Mary Shelley uh, version, not to be confused with the film called Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But again, this medical student, this idea of a student who is so brilliant but so narrowly focused that he misses out on the world around him. And if you read the book, he does miss out on the world around him. He is oblivious to so many different things that happen, as we learn when he's recounting his story to the people on the boat as the
And that is
monster is out
one.
there in
Sorry.
the is out there in the Arctic chasing him.
That is one whiny ass monster.
Yeah, but justifiably so.
I
But I
know.
agree. Actually, here's the thing. Actually, Joe, I think you bring up something a valuable point. If Frankenstein is a nerd, I would argue the literary monster is a geek. He is narrowly focused on only his own experience, his own obsessions, and he whines when about it the entire time, right? He wants to get back to, it's whoa, poor me.
Or
Uh,
wretch. I'm wretch.
yeah.
Wretch.
Uh,
Wretch.
and so, but again, and we've talked about this before, as much as I do, and I really do love all the Universal horror films, I like the Hammer horror films, but nobody's actually done a true Frankenstein movie yet that followed the book.
No.
You get
Not even Kenneth Branagh's.
you get
No.
glimpses of it, you get flows of it, but you
Because the whole
never
third
get,
act is the Bride of Frankenstein.
yeah.
And then Darabont wrote that script, and a lot of people consider it the best Frankenstein script ever written, and they turned out into one of the worst Frankenstein movies ever made. It's fascinating if you go down that rabbit hole or to look into it.
Because Del Toro was actually thought, oh,
That
I'll
was the
never get
best.
my chance when
I'll
this
never
is
get my
made.
chance because this is the best script ever written. And of course, um, and I'm not trying to shit on Kenneth Branagh, but most people consider the script far superior to the movie that was made.
But
Well,
you're right, Chad, in
it's
that it.
been a while now. They can do it.
I'd
Well,
say,
he's
well, and
doing
you're
it
right though,
for
Chad, that in
Netflix.
in some ways it does get parts of the book are in that movie.
Yeah.
But and we talked about this before. I don't want to rehash the whole thing, but nobody's ever done a novel accurate Dracula yet either.
No.
By the way, that's one I still get tickles out of the Bride of Frankenstein of their representation of Lord Byron and Mary Shelley and Mary Shelley's husband, because that is not who they were in real life.
Oh, were they sitting around talking about everything?
I don't know, they were fucking on gravestones, and Lord
Well, that's a
Byron
lot more
had a
interesting.
pet bear and
And you have to
probably died
remember
because he decided he no longer wanted to drink water and was drinking vinegar
when you
instead.
you have to remember also that I mean Mary Shelley, her mother was one of the proto-feminists, as the term was used. She was because feminism didn't exist yet, but wrote Vindication on the Rights of Women and everything else, and was, I mean,
And
a,
is it
a
doesn't the bride isn't in the beginning, isn't she crocheting on
I
the
don't remember
couch?
exactly what she's doing.
I'm pretty sure she's crocheting or knitting or something while she's talking to Lord Byron.
Bride of Frankenstein's one of those few films that's not only a horror comedy that's laugh out funny still in certain scenes, but it's superior to the actual
You
worst
have no
film.
comment. You can't comment on what a comedy is. You don't think you've changed your mind on Your Highness.
I don't remember changing my mind. None of us walked
Shut
out
the
of that and
you
didn't like that. I
shut
don't
the
know what the fuck you're
shut
talking
the
about.
hell
You
up.
shut the fuck
You
up. We
shut
all
the hell
three
up.
walked out about what the fuck was that? The only other thing that I
This argument is brought to you by
neg-
Fritos with the great taste of chorizo.
negativity was, oh
They
my
have
God, was it
chorizo
Dylan
Fritos?
Dog?
Yeah.
What?
Oh,
Only
Dylan.
thing that we
No,
ever walked out that we all agreed on was worse was Dylan Dog.
Yeah, yeah. But
Dylan.
they
I was mad at Dylan Dog because, again, here's
That damn thing
hold
was
on
damn near unwatchable.
real quick. Let me talk to the studio execs that I know watch our show. Hello, studio execs. Here's the deal:
Hello, James.
if you license a property that is well known around the world, or at least known very well in parts of the world, you license that property. That means the audience for that property already exists. Don't change it. Here's another example of that. The movie Blood Rain was based on a video game about an attractive female vampire that killed Nazis. If you watch the movie Blood Rain, and no offense meant to Yuva Bowl, that's not the plot to that movie. That's what happens when you screw up an IP that you've licensed, but you don't follow what made people love it because people love to see vampires kill Nazis. And also everything that Dylan Dog could have been as well. Thank you for your time. All right, back to the episode.
all right, so it's my turn.
Yep.
I don't know.
I'm gonna keep my theme going, gentlemen, and we're gonna keep going with cartoons. So James talked about Frankenstein, who's an inventor who creates a monster. I want to talk about an inventor who creates a type of monster. I got to talk about Gyro Gear Loose.
Oddly enough, Chad, I was coin flipping between two figures. I'm glad you took this one because I'll take the other one that I was going to talk about then. This is
Joe looks
perfect.
perplexed.
He has his own theme song, Joe.
What
Joe,
is
do you not remember Gyro Gear Loose, the nerdy inventor from DuckTales? Oh,
Oh no,
And
I
actually,
forgot
from
about
the
it.
Carl Barks Uncle Scrooge comics, he's been around
yeah.
forever.
He has
Oh, he
been
was in
around
Uncle Scrooge?
since
Okay.
1952, created by Carl Banks and Vic Lockman.
Hmm.
Uh, guys, do you know who voiced Gyro Gear Loose in the original DuckTales cartoon?
Nope.
Hal Smith, or as you know him, Otis the Drunk from the Andy Griffith
Yeah.
Show.
He also didn't Al Smith for a while voice shit, Winnie the Pooh. Am I got that wrong?
No, he was the voice of Winnie the Pooh for no, I think he was the voice of Al.
Yeah.
Was it Al that he was the voice of? I couldn't remember. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
In my head, it's always Winnie
Um,
the Pooh.
and in the new version of DuckTales, he was voiced by Jim Rash, who can write some pretty depressing shit. Um, yeah, Gyro Gearloose. I had to mention Gyro Gearloose because he invented one of the coolest characters of my childhood, Gizmo Duck.
It's
I
been a
loved Gizmo
while.
Blathering
Been a while.
Blatherskite.
Skite. Yes, because get and that's he create Gyro created that password that would activate Gizmo Duck because nobody in the world would ever come up with Blatherskite except for is it it's
Fenton.
Fenton. I didn't
Oh,
look at Fenton. Um,
oh, Chad, if you hadn't,
I knew it was Fenton, and then it blanked on me. Fenton Crackshell.
It's been so
Fenton
long.
Crackshell is the only person ever who ever says the phrase "blathern blatherskite" when something happens to him. And then hilarity ensues.
Hmm.
But yeah, whenever Scrooge McDuck needed something created for the sake of saving money or something to make his life easier, he always went to Gyro Gear Loose, and Gyro Gear Loose always failed spectacularly the majority of the time.
no, but he also was immensely successful as a failure. He created the time
Yes.
travel tub, Chad. Remember that?
Which
By the
in later
way,
seasons also gave us the uh when they jumped the shark, they gave us the little caveman boy.
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I posted, by the way, and we can't show it, or can't share it in the episode, I'm sure, because of copyright laws. But just for your own edification, gentlemen, if you're not familiar with his theme song, I have posted it in the
Oh,
chat for y'all to
and
watch later.
before we move on to Joe's pick, James, I do want to mention no, Gravedale High is not available on DVD, but you can find every episode in amazing quality on YouTube.
Yeah, but I need that physical media.
I know, so do I. Joe,
Here is another one that I hadn't watched in a long time, and my kid, I showed him the movie a couple years ago, and he wasn't into it, and I thought it was flawed. Now he's into it, and I probably just got to the right age. I still think it's got so many damn holes in it. I do love scenes in it, and I do have fond memories of it as a kid. But my last one is Data from the Goonies.
It's a good one. It's
Um,
a good one.
as much as you shit on that, as much as we talk about how much me and James still love Goonies and you shit on us for liking that, you
I
dare
did
pick
not
Data.
shit on you for liking it.
You
Shit
shit on
on you
that.
would be like a huge diarrhea. I just pointed
You
out the flaws,
you
and
rip on us every
your
time we talk about
revisionist
how much we love
history
Goonies. Like
agreed with me about every goddamn plot hole in it.
a cinema snob, you go, it's not even worth
Every
it.
plot hole you agreed with me. It's just
Yeah,
now
but
on air.
I still enjoy watching it. You stick your nose up and go, it's not even
It's
worth it.
oh, I had to rewatch it Saturday morning. It is okay. I enjoy scenes in it, but there's so much of it that just makes no sense whatsoever. I mean,
Eat
it
a
just isn't
dick.
even like
Eat
flow
a
makes
dick.
sense. But I was watching it and I actually did enjoy it. And it's played by which actor?
You
Ki
did not enjoy it.
Ki Huy Kwan. Are you just angry? Are
I'm
you,
angry at you
are
for
you
lying.
okay? I have so many jokes and I
You.
can't do them on air.
I am angry at you for lying right now.
Lying about what? Because I picked Data.
Liking Goonies.
I never said that. I said it's okay. I have fond memories of it.
Well, I mean, but in all fairness, if you pick any movie too long, you find huge plot holes in it. I mean, there's one in
That's
Citizen
every
Kane,
movie from
right?
the 80s.
There's one.
Indiana Jones has plot holes.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Well,
Citizen
actually,
Kane
Raiders
has
of the
plot
Lost
holes.
Ark has one of the biggest plot holes, and it's true, and it is true. It's like if Indiana did nothing, it would have affected the story.
Jaws has plot holes.
What's the plot hole in Jaws?
That there's no shark actually that big.
I don't know if that's a plot
Actually,
hole.
actually, actually. Now, Jaws
Go
2
ahead.
and 3, they somehow make that fucker over 30 feet long. They say it several times. But in the first Jaws, I'll take you to task on this. Technically, not a ton of them, but they have been seen. Now, back to
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Son of
he
a bitch.
is the greatest line. Pinchers of peril, you guys. I've been saved by my pinchers of
Inches of
peril.
peril.
And I was watching my kid giggle at him the other day and all the arguing. And what I'm sure Quentin loves is just the kids arguing and fighting like kids do. And it is fun and there is good scenes. I'm telling you,
My girls love it.
there are so many bad shots in this. There is one in particular. Now you got me going off to prove my point, Chad. Before instead of
There's no reason to prove your point. We know that there's plot holes.
no, it's not even
So
that.
enjoyable.
It's not even that. When what's his face, the villain, the guy that's a huge Republican, what's his name?
Oh
It's in
my,
Die
I'm
Hard.
blanking on his name. Man, he's insane.
Right. But
Yeah.
he's a diehard. When he is singing, when they chunk as I flags him down, and he's singing, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
When he
yeah,
turns
yeah.
on the light, starts singing. When it cuts to the reverse shot where he's in the rear view mirror, you can still see him singing without his lips moving. You'll hear it.
I need to go
He's
back and
still
watch it.
singing.
I need to
It's
go back
about
and watch
three
it.
seconds, but I know Richard Donner's better than that. I know because I've seen his other pictures. I've seen his other pictures.
I don't know. You seen that piece of trash movie called Lethal Weapon?
I have. I have.
Four.
That works really well because that's a really good screenplay.
Joe just said he likes Lethal Weapon 4. Everybody heard it.
I've never seen Lethal. Oh yeah, I've seen Lethal Weapon before. No, I meant Lethal Weapon. Actually, I
Eh,
like the first two Lethal Weapon.
he said he likes Lethal Weapon 4. It's recorded.
Anyway, so King Hoy Kwan, who finally is starting to get, and he's actually one of the better parts of the that one movie where the
Everything,
time.
everywhere, all at once.
No, I did like that. Although Jamie Lee shouldn't have won for that. She won for her whole
Yeah,
career.
that's one of those Oscars that I think
That's
it
a
was.
John Wayne. It's a John Wayne.
John Wayne, that's
Yeah,
nowhere near Jamie Lee's best performance. In fact,
no.
her performance in the Halloween reboot was better than that.
There was other people nominated that year who should have won that role.
Yeah, she got that for a lifetime. Yeah, she should have won for her basic cameo in one episode. It's not really a cameo. She's in a whole episode of The Bear where she is fantastic. If you've never seen it, just
Hmm.
watch that one particular episode. Of course, it doesn't have as much weight if you don't watch the first nine. But anyway, Data from the Goonies. I was watching my kid laugh, and I thought it's kind of hard not to mention him. Like I know most of them might have been '80s picks this time, but there were so many '80s nerds. It was a thing. Whereas nerds now are just part of the culture. We're part of the zeitgeist. We're everywhere.
James.
So, Chad, I said I'd go with the other one. And oddly enough, this goes into a trope that also emerged in the 80s. It existed before, don't get me wrong, but it became really a major trope in the 80s. And that is the nerd that is so nerdy they don't realize that they're attractive. And
Almost always a woman, right?
there is one key character that was packaged and sold to us in the 80s and 90s that as an animated character summed that up so well. And that would, of course, be Gadget Hackwrench from Rescue Rangers.
The person who made everybody feel weird things.
Yes, yes. It's the
No,
only
no, hold on. That's
time.
the rat, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
the mouse. Yeah,
She's a mouse. She's not a rat.
So that's
yeah,
the
You
rat, right?
Philistine.
I'm sticking
Yes.
by my original. That's the rat with the nice hair.
yeah. Oh,
See,
but
that just proves you put a good wig on anything.
I
James
don't
will try to
that
nail it,
that may
especially if
be
it's a red wig.
that may be well, she's not red. It's not red, Joe.
I didn't say she was, did I?
I think you're just
I
making
just know
things
your
up.
proclivities.
No, actually, per- we've talked about this before. I
You
prefer
don't have to lie to
blondes.
the camera.
I don't.
I know the truth in my
I,
heart.
I mean, I historically had preferred blondes. My wife is brunette, but anyway. Um, but no. So I think it's a fascinating thing that happened because Gadget is oblivious, other than she likes building stuff. She, wants to solve problems. She has a great deal of mechanical know-how, but the ongoing joke throughout the show is she has no awareness. She has an obsession with technology and science. She's resourceful and inventive, but is completely oblivious to everyone else because basically throughout the entire series, I mean, every other character is dropping some pretty heavy hints that they're attracted to her.
Well, she
Except
does
Monterey
have a
Jack.
wig on.
Monterey Jack doesn't.
Monterey Jack's love. Monterey Jack.
He's more of an uncle.
Well, he is more of an uncle, and also, let's face it, if we've learned anything from watching that show, Monterey Jack is a cheesosexual.
Hmm.
He is only sexually attracted to cheese.
He was
Now
my
he's
favorite character.
yeah, no, I don't know, Chad. Did you ever play the Nintendo game?
Yes.
Like Monterey Jack, you had to summon because he would break through a wall to get to the cheese on the
Cheese.
other
Yeah.
side.
Yep.
I mean, that was who he was, and that's what I said. It wasn't just that he wanted to eat the cheese. I think we can put the surface clues together. Monterey Jack was he wanted to eat the cheese, but he was also attracted to cheese. Physically, mentally, socially, that man had an obsession. He had a type. Limburger, I think, was Limburger the one that drove him completely crazy?
Oh
Lindbergh was
man.
the one where they lost a kid after they took a
No,
flight.
that's Lindbergh, but I appreciate where
Lindbergh.
you're
That's
going.
where they
Mm.
went, where they took a flight and left their kid at home, like Home Alone. And when they came back, it was gone.
And he was a
That's how that story
Nazi.
went.
Oh, by the
Then,
way, it's a throwaway
then
line.
Donald Trump had him there at that tower there when he was lost in New York, and they never did get him back. Never
There
did.
is a throwaway line, but if anybody, I don't know if any of you all watches that Hot Ones, the short
I have
interview
watched
things.
many of them, but I haven't watched all of them.
Well, there's the one dropped recently, and it's Family Guy. It's in honor of the 25th anniversary of Family Guy. And Peter's the one being interviewed, but there's a great line where he tries the first way and he goes, "Oh, this is really hot," and it reminds me I left my kid in the car, and the host goes, "Oh my God, do you need to go get him?" And goes, "No, I rolled the window up. He can't get out." I don't know why I found it
It's
hilarious.
funny. It's funny.
Um, but anyway, yes. So, but no,
And
Gadget Hack Wrench is probably one of the nerdiest cartoon characters in pop culture. But the fact that they also made sure everybody knew, hey, this character is supposed to be uber attractive, and it's oblivious because of her own nerddom to her own attractive nature.
can I add one thing to that?
Sure.
That Rescue Ranger movie on Disney Plus was so good and way
Mhm.
better than it had any right to be. It was well written, well executed. I really enjoy that. I've had to watch it a bunch of times, but as movie is way better than it has any right to be.
I
Hey,
haven't
you
got to see it
can
yet, I'll be honest, because I kept waiting for my family. And then I realized my kids have no idea about Rescue Rangers because they've never watched it.
Mine didn't either.
So, like, they love DuckTales, but they have no interest in Rescue Rangers. So I'm going to have to watch it. Does it also feature an attractive guy?
She comes in the third act,
don't want to
topless,
spoil what happens to her.
but it is
Don't.
topless.
Huh.
So you be all about that redhead action.
No, well, what's funny to me is the fact that that character existed on the television and kind of the same quasi time that we also got Jessica Rabbit.
Yeah, because there's a certain time we were just letting anything through.
Yeah,
Barbarians
but
at the
honestly,
gate. Barbarians at the gate.
the inmates were running the asylum, Joe.
Absolutely.
And you know what? We were all the better for it.
I agree. Let them run the asylum. Chad, you're last.
Oh man,
So many
I
honorable mentions. So many.
I do. I have so many too, guys. I'm going the animated route, and I have to talk about Master Billy Quiz Boy from the Venture Brothers.
That's a good one. That is
Thank
good.
you. I don't think Joe's ever seen this
I've
episode.
never, I never watched the Venture Brothers past the first episode, first or second.
Oh,
I'm
the
Yeah.
sure it's
Scooby Doo
great. I've just never
episode
got to it.
belongs in the Hall of Fame. It's not Scooby Doo, but that particular episode that where they're mocking Scooby Doo belongs in the Hall of Fame for everything.
So poor Master Billy Quiz Boy uh, is a true nerd. He's a short man with a massive head who is a true genius, knows all, is truly intelligent, knows a lot of things. And the problem is he has attached himself to an albino named Pete White, who pretends to be genius, but all he does is really feed off Billy Quizboy and puts this man through hell. Because of Pete White, Billy Quizboy loses an eye, he loses an arm, he 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 gets tortured beyond all belief because of Pete White. And they stay attached because Billy he is Billy's only friend because Billy was picked on and doesn't have anybody else because he is a true nerd. Even though he can pretty much do anything, but he has that relationship with Pete, and you just watch through the seasons as poor Billy it gets in one predicament after another because of his relationship with Pete. And it's never a positive to poor Billy. He always ends up getting screwed one way or another. And then like one time he gets mauled by a series of dogs because Pete convinces him to go on a in a black market game show. I mean, it's just absolutely insane because that was Billy Quizboy. That the reason he got that name is because that's how he used to get his income. Is he would go on all these game shows and just through his sheer knowledge of just random facts, he would win after game show after game show after game show. So
I'm sure it's something I would love if I go back and do it. It's just another one of those. It's like what's it called? The something Ferengi. Oh, it's the same people. A lot of them are the same. Garth Ferengi's the one where they do
Yeah,
everything
yeah,
bad.
yeah.
Dark,
Dark
what? Yeah, I
place or
watched an
whatever. Yeah.
episode or two of it. I got the joke. I thought it was funny. I was just thinking about that today of stuff.
Well, there's only
eventually could sit
six
down and
episodes of
watch.
that, right, or something. But yeah, it's um yeah, you're right. Well, and it's also, I mean, quite frankly, it's funny because my kids are coming out of that stage where I couldn't watch certain things and I fell behind, and y'all now have kids in that age, so I'm now catching up, or at least trying to.
I wish I
Um,
could blame it all on him.
well, no, but
I
I
just
mean,
blame most everything on him.
our
Not
time
everything.
is finite. I mean, it's not just him, but it's also everything else, and we have so much time and so much attention that we can
There
give.
was finally time at last.
Mm. Speaking of book nerd,
Yes. Who's last?
That would be you.
yeah,
No, I
you.
already went 3 times.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? Aren't we done?
Are
Didn't we
we're
used to do
done?
three? Well,
Yeah.
we were going to do honorable mentions unless we
Honorable
want to do a
mention.
part three. But I think
No,
honorable mentions are good here.
I have two honorable mentions if you don't mind me going first.
Sure.
Actually, my thing dropped. James, go ahead, or Chad. Sorry.
James, you go ahead. Because I am
Uh,
shocked there's one that you did not mention, and I am just
I am too.
truly stunned.
well, I mean, I talked about. I think we did a short on this originally. Is what kicked this off. Because we did a short for Glenn. Maybe I'm misremembering that for Good Movie Monday. Um, but I mean, obviously, I talked before about Scotty from Star Trek, stuff like that. But I think there's a lot of other nerds, and I've named. I'm guilty, um other than Gadget. I've named a lot of men across the two episodes. I want to definitely give some honorable mentions, and I think these go along with that trope of nerdy women who are attractive that
Yeah.
don't know they're attractive, and I think and I can't say I'm the expert on this show, but I don't think you can talk about this without also bringing up the character Willow Rosenberg from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, played by Allison Hannigan, um, who is shy and nerdy and loves books and computers and all of that stuff, which of course helps move the plot along, but is she Allison Hannigan, the actress who played her, was not overly hard on the eyes.
No,
Um,
absolutely not. And can I follow up one with you? I mean, you can have several, but can I bounce
yeah,
one
yeah.
off of you on that?
Yep.
There's the two, and and they come up in a ton of searches, and none of us said them. I don't remember anybody saying Velma from
That was
Stranger.
actually going to be another one. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
And the one that comes up in every search that I
The
didn't hear,
only the only Velma is Linda Cardellini's Velma.
well, that's because you and I have a different kink. But
Well, I actually, I'll actually agree with Joe on that. I always saw, even as a kid, I was like, I mean, because Daphne was always danger prone, and I get hurt too easy. Velma
yeah,
was always
well,
the
no,
one I'd be like, I could hang out with Velma.
now cartoon Daphne, I'm okay with. But what I was going to say was the one that comes up in a ton and we didn't mention, and I think we may get rocks thrown at us, is Hermione Granger from Harry Potter.
Yeah,
If you Google it and you just start talking nerds and film, she's almost on her and Egon are almost on every damn list.
well, and that's even in the book. So, and that's actually one of the things J.K. Rowling made the comment that she's glad that she didn't get to meet her in person. That she just, I think she heard the audio of her audition, and she
Hmm.
didn't see the video until later because she said that's not what I envisioned. Because if you read the books, Hermione's not supposed to be cute.
Oh, really?
She's supposed to be kind of pig nosed and all that stuff, and she grows into her features as the books go on
Mm.
and everything. But she said no. If I would have saw her, I wouldn't have been able to reconcile it. But it works out so well. But yeah, in the book, you get glimpses of it in the movie where she corrects everybody's pronunciation and things like that. But in the books, yeah, she is an egotistical nerd,
Yeah.
which is a different trope of its own. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think we definitely that's a mention that we have to do.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean that's my only two. I thought the Velma thing right just kind of connects to which ones you were saying.
Oh yeah, no, no, Velma is absolutely one. I think video game wise, you get characters like Tails from Sonic. Tails isn't
Mhm.
as fast as Sonic, but he uses technology. He uses his plane. He has all these incredible engineering skills. He's smart, and that's how he's able to hang with Sonic and do what he does. Um, and I think Chad, real quick, just because you mentioned Transformers, if you need a human equivalent, you get Chip Chase, right? I think that's the other
Yeah.
option there. Um, and so I guess other than that, that's kind of the ones that come to mind. I guess you could also, if you want, because we've mentioned the Marvel one, I don't want to upset any DC fans, but if you're a fan of the Arrowverse, you could look at Caitlin Snow as an example, or Felicity Smoke, are examples of nerds who really drive plots and things like that. So that's just some honorable mentions that came to my mind, but I know Chad has more, so I'll stop talking now.
I can't believe that I'm still shocked. Okay. So I'll do my three quickly, and then I'll just be stunned by my fourth one that I didn't mention at all because I kept waiting for James to do it. Arthur from The Tick.
Oh, that's a good one. I'll give you that one. That was a good
Yeah.
one.
Um, Chucky from Rugrats.
His, by the way, just Arthur from the Tick. I love his battle cry.
Yeah.
Not in the face.
Not the
Not in the
face.
face.
Not the face. The Brain Gremlin from Gremlins 2.
That's a good one.
And
I'm
then the
glad I didn't
one,
get that one.
yeah, I almost brought it up, but I was like, yeah, I just had more to talk about the other ones. And then the one I'm absolutely just completely stunned that never made it to James's list, not even an honorable mention. Q from James Bond.
That's actually not the one I was going to mention.
Yeah,
I,
well, and
I don't know how Q did not make it, James,
you're
on your list.
absolutely right. No, actually, what's funny is, Chad, I found now that you've mentioned it, I did an old list for our first episode, and I never went back and looked at it. He's at the bottom of it, so you're absolutely right. He was on my list at one point
But he was
because
at the bottom. I thought he would have been at the top.
I assumed you all would take him. That's why I literally
No,
had him back.
James
Why?
Bond is your
You
dude.
Q is, but you're absolutely right because Q can't function outside the lab, right? He can't because there's that
Yeah.
entire one of my favorite Q scenes of the more modern films, and I think it's Pierce Brosnan. Um, and so that's how modern it is.
Is John
He
Cleese
he
plays
plays
him in the
R.
Brosnans, right?
Q was in the
Oh,
first
okay.
couple, but the actor was getting old and he retired, and then sadly died in a car accident shortly after that
Yeah, he
because he
he
has that
didn't die of
great.
old age. Yeah.
No, he has that great exit scene though. He goes, "Remember the two things I told you," and one of them is never let him see you bleed. Um, but it's a great scene, and it shouldn't work. It shouldn't be funny, but I absolutely love it where he's showing him all the equipment, and and by the time the early Pierce Brosnan, the equipment's outlandish, and I love it. Don't get me wrong. The reason James Bond works is you can make it gritty or you can make it hilarious.
Hmm.
But there's an entire thing where it's like, oh, this pen does this and everything, and then Bond picks up a sandwich, and Q goes, "Put that down. That's my lunch." It's just a throwaway, stupid line, but I laugh every time because everything else has been, "This is a jacket that will explode," or "This is," and as soon as he tries to, and he's yelling at him, "Don't touch that, it'll do this." But as soon as he picks up the sandwich, "Put that down. That's my lunch." So anyway, but yeah, you're absolutely right, Chad.
Yeah,
That
I
was on my
was
list, and I didn't transfer it over when we did part two, and that's on me.
I just kept waiting and waiting and waiting. I was like, if there's a nerd that should be made on a list, it's definitely Q.
Oh yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree because Q is. I mean, that's his entire. As a matter of fact, I'll even argue in the when the Daniel Craig movies introduced the
Ben
Q.
Whitnell.
Yeah, it's perfect. I mean, it is.
Paddington. It's Paddington.
Yeah, but it is. I mean, just he's socially awkward. He's weird. Whatever he's got going on, and he doesn't want to be bothered.
Yeah.
He wants to do what he does, and he doesn't want to be bothered outside of it. And I was like, that is. Was Desmond Llewellyn the original Q? I think it's the name of the actor.
Yeah, Desmond
Yeah.
Llewellyn.
I think that spirit was inherent in his character, the way he portrayed as well. So I was like, oh no, it's close enough. I give him credit. So yeah. Anyway, Joe, which one did you think I missed?
Harold Lloyd, the freshman.
That's true. That's true. He is. I mean, but I think that is.
And it shows up on a lot of lists too when you Google.
Yeah, and no, it's true. Because he's a. But I would almost argue. Let me get into semantics. I would argue he's more of a geek.
Hmm.
He's obsessed with pop culture. He's not overly a good student. He's obsessed with pop culture. He memorizes a movie and assumes that's what college is going to be like. And so I would actually argue to let me battle those lists. I would argue that Harold Lloyd in The Freshman is more of a geek. He's obsessed with pop culture. He's not overly intelligent, which is also why he gets taken advantage of so much.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, that's the one I
though,
was thinking.
though I guess you could argue he does have a singular obsession, which is football, but that seems to not go with the nerd vibe either. I don't know. That's a good point.
Hmm. All right. Well, this has been part 2 of Nerds in Pop Culture. Keep
And
tuning
if
in.
you
Go ahead.
feel that we've missed some, feel free to
Show up
leave comments.
Scarefest to our panel.
Yeah, and feel free to add to the comments. And if we need to do a part 3, I'll be shocked.
Absolutely.
Um, but our next episode, we'll look at famous barbers named Floyd. Can we fill an hour? Yes, we can. Should we? Probably not.
Not. This has been Bonehead Weekly.